Guys, it's Miss Moore and it's time for Reader's Workshop. This week we will be learning all about frogs. You can even find the book that I'm reading today on Epic. It's a read to me book, so you are welcome to listen along. All right, let's get started. This week, while we're reading our frog book, I want you to work on continuing making connections. Okay, if we look at what this little boy is thinking about, there's a picture of a tadpole and a frog and a baby and a boy. Think about what connections he could be making. If you make any connections while we're reading the story, remember you can make a connection symbol. We always work on our vocabulary when we're reading the book. So today, these are the words we're listening for: habitat, croak, poison, and gills. All right. When we hear those words, we'll stop and we will talk about them. Okay. So the first word we are going to be listening for is habitat. So when you hear me read the word habitat, you can tell me to stop and we will come back over here and talk about it. Okay. All right. So here's our book. It's called Frogs. Remember, our first word is habitat. I'm going to make my picture a little bit smaller so you can see the book better. All right, here we go. Splash. Splish, splash. What's that sound? What is hopping and jumping around? What loves to swim? What loves to eat bugs? It's a frog. Can you hop like a frog? Frogs live all over the world except for Antarctica. Frogs usually live in wet places. They like rivers, lakes, and ponds. But some frogs live in trees. Some even live in the desert. Frogs can be found all over the world. Wherever they live, that's their habitat. We heard the word habitat. All right, so habitat. Let's look at the picture. There's a frog on a lily pad. It says habitat, the natural place where a plant or animal lives. So habitat's just a big word for house. So a habitat for a frog might be on a lily pad, might be in the mud, might be in the desert. So to remember that habitat is just like where an animal lives, like a house, could we make ourselves maybe make a house? What motion could we do to help remember the word habitat? You like house? All right, let's make a little house. Right now, hopefully you're in your habitat or in your house. All right, good job. The next word we are listening for is croak. When you hear the word croak, tell me to stop and we'll talk about it. Croak. Look at this frog croaking. Some frogs' throats puff up when they make sounds. Each type of frog makes its own sound. The coqui frog is named after the sound it makes. It sounds like coqui. This frog is the size of a quarter. Even small frogs can make loud noises. Let's go talk about the word croak. All right, croak. Ooh, look at this picture. This is a really cool picture. So look at that frog's throat. He has like these big bubbles. So croak is the deep, hoarse sound that a frog makes. So it's like rabbit or something really loud. And when a frog croaks, you can see its throat puff out. When you croak, does your throat puff out? No, mine doesn't either. What motion could we do for croak? Maybe you can make your mouth croak. Croak. Maybe you can make the big bubbles in your throat. Croak. You pick your favorite. All right, nice job listening for the word croak. Our next word that we will be listening for is poison. When you hear the word poison, we'll come back and talk about it. Frogs make different sounds for different reasons. Sometimes it's to warn other frogs of danger. Sometimes it's to call other frogs nearby. This frog lives around a noisy waterfall. Other frogs would not be able to hear its call, so he dances instead. It sticks out one leg and then the other. Can you dance like a frog? You can see him croaking, but the other frogs can't hear him, so he has to dance to get their attention. Frog food. What is a frog's favorite food? Usually it's insects. Frogs eat dragonflies and crickets and other bugs. Some frogs eat bigger animals like worms and mice. The American bullfrog even eats other frogs. Do you see that there? He's eating another frog. Yikes. What's that pink flash? It's how a frog catches bugs. It shoots out its long, sticky tongue at a bug, and the frog pulls the bug back into its mouth. If your tongue were as long as a frog's tongue, you could stick out your tongue and it could reach your belly button. Is your tongue long enough to reach your belly button? Me neither. Every size and color. Frogs can be many different sizes. The smallest frog is as big as your fingernail. Whoa, that's teeny tiny. The largest frog is as big as a rabbit. Ooh, you can see it over here. It's actually called a Goliath frog. Wow, that's really big. Frogs can be different colors too. Some are green or brown. Others have stripes or spots. Frogs can be red, yellow, or orange. They can even be bright blue. Which color is your favorite? I like the blue frog. I think that looks pretty cool. Watch out. These colorful frogs may look pretty, but watch out. These frogs have poison in their skin. Their bright color warns enemies not to eat them. Ooh, we heard our word poison. Let's go talk about it. All right, poison is something that can kill or hurt living things. So some of the frogs have poison in them. So if an animal eats the frog, what would happen? It would die. What would happen if you ate a poisonous frog? You could die or maybe just get kind of hurt. So what could we do to remember that poison means something that can kill or hurt someone? How about maybe like an X? Like, no, don't do it. Don't eat me. Don't eat that. It could be poisonous. Maybe there's something in your house that's poisonous if you ate it, like something like a cleaner that your mom or dad might use to clean the house. So stay away from poison. It's not good for you. All right, the last word that we're going to listen for is the word gills. This little frog is only an inch long, about this big. Its name is Terribilis, which means the terrible one. How did it get its name? By being the most deadly frog of all. One Terribilis has enough poison in it to kill 20,000 mice. Well, just a teeny tiny frog, but he's very dangerous. Frog babies. All frogs, even the Terribilis, have mothers. Mother frogs lay eggs. When the eggs are ready, out pop little tadpoles. Tadpoles are baby frogs, but they don't look like frogs yet. Tadpoles have tails. They can only live in the water. Have you ever seen a tadpole? Show me a connection if you have. Tadpoles grow up to be frogs. Step 1. At first, they breathe underwater with gills. That's our vocabulary word. All right. Gills are body parts that fish or tadpoles use to breathe. We don't have gills because we have lungs in our body that helps us breathe, but tadpoles and fish don't have lungs. So they have things called gills on the side of their neck that lets them breathe in and out. What motion could we do to remember that gills are the part of a fish or a tadpole that lets it breathe? Maybe you like this. In and out, in and out. All right, so that was our last vocabulary words. We're going to go finish the story, and then we're going to come back and do a couple other things. All right, so we're reading about how tadpoles breathe at first with gills underwater. Then step 2, they grow lungs for breathing air, like we do. Step 3, they grow legs for hopping and swimming. In step 4, in about 3 months, they lose their tail, and it's time for them to hop out of the water. Toads are frogs too. Do you know the difference between toads and frogs? Toads are a type of frogs spend most of their lives around water. Toads spend more time on dry land. Their bodies are built for where they live. This reminds me, one of my favorite books is called Frog and Toad. So it's kind of neat to see how they might be the same or might be different. Let's read a little more. Let's read about frogs. Some frogs are poisonous. Frog's skin is moist and smooth. Frogs have teeth in their jaws. Frogs have long, powerful jumping legs. Most frogs have webbed feet. And when frogs lay eggs, they lay them in a group or like a circle. Now let's read about toads. Toads have no teeth. That makes them different than a frog. Toads, their eyes do not bulge out of their body. Their poison gland is located behind each eye. So are toads poisonous too? Sounds like it. A toad's skin is dry and bumpy. That's different than a frog. Toads have shorter legs for walking, not really for swimming, so their legs are different than a frog. Toads lay their eggs in a long chain, more like a line, so that's different than the frog. So that's a tongue twister. Frogs and toads have some things that are the same, but they also have some things that are different. So if you catch a frog or toad, I want you to use this page to help you see, is it a frog or is it a toad? If you catch one, please send me a picture. Super frogs. A fake face fools enemies when this frog turns around. What? It looks like it has 2 heads, but that's not true. This is a fake one on its booty. That scares away predators. This one's called the high flyer. Any frog can jump, but watch me glide. Ooh, so when this frog jumps, it kind of looks like it's flying. Let's look at this one. The screamer. Loudmouth frogs leave enemies stunned. Did you know that frog can scream? This one says invisible. He's a master of disguise. He's camouflaged. He's pretty tricky to see. That will keep his enemies away. All right, let's finish our story. Oops, that was actually the end. So there are the words that we already talked about. We talked about croak. It's that deep sound that a frog makes. Maybe you make a croak with your mouth, or you make a croak where your throat pops out. Croak. We talked about habitat. That's where an animal lives. This frog's habitat looks like it's in the dirt. That's where he's living. And then gills are on the side of a tadpole or a fish's neck, and it lets them breathe. And then the other word we talked about, poison. Remember, you want to stay away from poison. That's not good for you. All right. If you enjoyed that book, you can check it out on Epic. All right. We got 2 more things to do. We are going to next look at the life cycle of a frog. So a life cycle is how it starts, how it ends, and how it goes over and over again. Okay. So frogs start out with eggs. And remember, frogs and toads lay their eggs differently. Once the eggs hatch, they can turn into a tadpole. And then the tadpole grows legs. Then its tail falls off, and you might call it like a froglet. It's not quite a frog yet. And then you have a young frog, still not quite a frog, but not quite a tadpole. And then finally, you have the adult frog. So can you tell me, what is the first thing that happens in a frog's life cycle? Yeah, it has eggs. What happens after a frog lays eggs? The eggs hatch into tadpoles. Remember, tadpoles have the gills on their neck. And what happens after the tadpole stage of a life cycle? Then they turn into an adult. I have a fun song that's going to help us remember the life cycle of a frog. Good job telling me about it. This is the last thing we're going to do today. We're going to watch this quick little video. It's called Froggy Froggy.
Froggy, froggy in the stream, froggy, froggy in the tree. The life cycle just goes on and on. Now listen up to my froggy song. The froggy life cycle goes like this. 4 unique stages of metamorphosis. Stage 1 is a bunch of eggs in a pot. When they stick all together, they call it egg spawn. Stage 2 is the tadpole hatch from the egg. But you've got to look closely because he's got no legs. At first, this guy is more like a fish, breathing with gills, just watch him swim. Stage 3 is the tadpole with some legs. Then we go to stage 4 where he's a full-fledged adult frog. Check out his web feet. This helps him to swim when he's in the stream. Check out his legs. He's a really good leaper when it comes to bugs. He's a really good eater. He does not breathe like he did when he was young. Instead, he breathes with a pair of lungs. Froggy, froggy in the stream, froggy, froggy in the tree. The life cycle just goes on and on. Now listen up to my froggy song.
Can you sing it with me?
The answer everybody wants to know. What is the difference between frogs and toads? Both of them live a double life, sometime on land, but they also might spend time in the water. Just watch them jump in. This double life makes them amphibians. Land is where toads would rather be, but if you're a frog, you prefer the creek. Hey, there's other differences that I spy. Frogs are slimy, toads are dry.
You learned that.
A few more facts about these guys. Some use the color as a disguise. That's camouflage. The sound they make you really can't miss. Froggy, froggy in the stream. Froggy, froggy in the tree. The life cycle just goes on and on. Now listen up to my froggy song.
All right. I hope you guys enjoyed that song, and I hope you enjoyed learning about frogs. Remember, if you see a frog, make sure you can tell the difference. Is it a frog or is it a toad? And watch some videos from other teachers to learn even more this week. We'll see you next week. Bye, guys.